So I was contacted last week by a student asking if he could join us here today in this service as he is researching about different religions for his immersive journalism project. And he was asking questions like, how do people get involved in religion and what draws them in? And at the same time, we have all the young kids with us here today, there's this feast waiting for us after I get done talking. So I want to try to keep my remarks a little short today. And for those of you that have been here for a while, you know that I'm not always so good at that, but I'll do my best. So, religion attempts to answer big questions like, how did we get here? And what happens after we're gone? And given all that, what are we supposed to do while we're here? These are big questions that folks have been trying to answer for as long as humans have been able to wonder. I think cave people began thinking, how come after Ugg ate that berry, Ugg never woke up again? Who is making the sky light up and make all those loud noises? Why does the Pharaoh get to live in that palace and eat peeled grapes, but I have to spend my whole life in the desert building these pyramids? That doesn't seem fair. Thunder, war, love, right and wrong, fair and unfair. Many different people have thought long and hard about these questions through the ages. There used to be many different gods used to explain all of these things. In fact, there are as many explanations for how it all works as there have been different peoples throughout history. As different groups of folks have come up with different answers, these answers become the stories that they've told to help the next generation figure out what it all means and thus how to live. And most people throughout history have believed what they believed because it's what their parents told them. And that's generally a pretty good thing because generally our parents want us to be successful, right? And as our parents figured out their answers to life's hard questions, they passed them down to help us try to find our way. Now these days, more and more people are turning to science to answer many of these questions. And science is kind of a little bit like a religion. It's based on the idea that things can be known, and if we ask questions and make guesses about what the best answer is, we can run tests to determine which of our answers seem to be the most right? And it can give us some confidence about how things work and thus how we should live. Now, science can explain a lot, but it can't answer all of the questions that humans wrestle with. For example, why do bad things sometimes happen to really good people? And why do good things sometimes happen to really bad people? How come I have a house full of toys, but some people don't even have a house? And do I really even need to think about that? Right? Unitarian Universalism is often referred to as a chosen faith. Many people who were born into different religious traditions find that the explanations that they were given by those traditions to try to make sense of the world just don't seem to make sense to them. So this particular faith says, well, we don't have all the answers, but we do believe that if you're willing to keep looking, you might just find some of the answers that you're looking for. And we're all looking anyway, so let's look together. Maybe we can help each other figure things out. Plus, it's way more fun to do it together. And some of these questions really are kind of hard, so maybe we can learn from each other. So to my friend that's here trying to learn about what religions are and what brings people here, that's what this faith is really all about. It's a bunch of different people from all different places with all different beliefs coming together to try to figure out how to live. We don't say this is the way. We're more likely to ask, What have people learned in the past that seem to work that might help us live better today? Which brings us to today's lesson on gratitude. Ancient peoples, in their attempts to make sense of it all, often tried to make the gods happy so that the gods would be in a good mood and not make scary things like floods and earthquakes happen. When the difference between life and death is enough rain for a good harvest, you better believe folks are going to do all they can do to tip the odds in their favor. So people got in the habit of giving thanks for their good fortune at the end of a good year of harvest. And those folks that had good fortune survived the winter, so those folks often said, I give thanks, and I had good fortune, and I survived. Maybe I should keep giving thanks. It really is that simple in some ways. It turns out, if science is your religion, behavioral scientists have learned that being thankful is actually a great survival mechanism. Because science has taught us that life can be completely random, and how we respond when bad things happen is a predictor of how well we will be able to get through to the other side of that hardship. Joseph Campbell, a professor of literature who studied mythology and religion, said, "So if you really want to help this world, what you will have to teach is how to live in it. And that no one can do who has not themselves learned how to live in the joyful sorrow and sorrowful joy of the knowledge of life as it is." Learning how to live in the joyful sorrow and the sorrowful joy of the knowledge of life as it is. Most of us here come to church to get lessons and reminders to help guide our choices in life. Being grateful for what we have is one of those lessons that it's a good thing to be reminded of on a regular basis. American culture, where we almost live, reminds us to be thankful maybe once a year, but that is not nearly enough. If you only remember to be thankful once a year, your life might feel pretty scarce. And holding on to a belief that you don't have enough tends to lead to a lot of competition and a lot of sadness. As I was preparing this sermon leading up to Thanksgiving, I was researching the source of our American Thanksgiving tradition. And most of you know the story of the Pilgrims being helped by the native peoples that they met and that helped prepare them to survive that first winter. That's a good story. The holiday that we call Thanksgiving, many of the folks that were native to this land before we got here actually refer to as the National Day of Mourning. It's kind of amazing how different the same event can be remembered depending on which side of the table you're sitting on. I came across a quote from Bryant Mosquetet Whedon, chairman of the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribal Council, speaking at a gathering to honor that tradition. He said, "People need to understand that you need to be thankful each and every day. That was how our ancestors that survived on this land for tens of thousands of years, that was how our ancestors thought and navigated the world. Because we were thankful, we were willing to share. We came to that first feast with good intentions and with good heart." A society that forgets how to share may do okay for a few hundred years, but will surely not survive for long, because the truth is, we need each other to survive. Gratitude, giving thanks, is a spiritual practice, and it really does take practice. It's important to practice it before you need it. It's kind of like a fire drill. Kids, have you ever had a fire drill in school? Yep, raise your hand. Yep, so you know your fire drill, right? You say, okay, there's going to be a fire, and you all have to get out of the school, right? You practice what to do in case there's a fire, and you could live your whole life and there'd never be a fire. But in the off tiny slim chance that there is actually a fire, You'll be really glad that you practiced how to quickly get out safely if that fire ever happens, right? That's why we do fire drills. It's the same thing in life. If something really bad happens, and it doesn't often happen, but things do happen, right? So if something really bad happens, it's better to have a plan in place before it happens than trying to scramble around and figure out what to do when your world is feeling upside down. So in my mind, gratitude is ultimately a survival strategy. Each and every morning, I get out of bed, and I open the door, and I walk downstairs, and I open the outside door, and I let my dogs out. And I live in the city. I live out in Milwaukee. And sometimes it's really easy for me to forget that I am connected to a beautiful world, because it's just houses and buildings and concrete. So each morning, no matter the weather, I step outside, and I look to the east. And there's this giant maple tree between these two houses. And in the fall, it's this bright, fiery, beautiful red. And oftentimes, if I actually get up early enough, the sun is coming up behind it. And I take a deep breath, and I give thanks for that beauty, for that moment. And then I turn and I look to the south, and there's a few trees down there. And then I turn and look to the west, and I can see a few trees over there. And then I peek around my house, and I see a few trees to the north. And when I do that, I am reminded that I am surrounded by beauty. Even though I don't see it if I'm just going about my day-to-day, if I really pay attention and look, I remember that I am surrounded by beauty. And then I go into the house, and I make my coffee, and I start my day. That's a spiritual practice. That's all it is. Some people say grace before they eat a meal, remembering to be thankful for the bounty that they've been given. Some people try to remember one thing that happened to them that was good that day, and try to remember that thing before they drift off to sleep. I don't know that it matters who you're saying thanks to. Maybe there's somebody listening, maybe there's not. I don't know. But I do know that the act of saying thanks actually does strengthen our spirits. This, for me, no kidding aside, has been the greatest year of my life. I've traveled the world. I got engaged to a woman that I love deeply and who I can tell loves me deeply. I went on an epic road trip with my daughter. I have friends. I love the work I do. I have enough money to keep a roof over my head. I have my health. I love where I live. And I have enough time to do many of the things that I love to do. I honestly have abundance beyond what I believe to be possible. So I am thankful. And I try to share my abundance because my faith tells me that we are all connected. And what happens to me happens to you. My experience tells me that the more I give away, the more I get back. You may see me up here each week adding money to the collection basket and ask, why would he do that? That's just going back to the church. The church pays his salary. What is he doing? It's just one of my gratitude practices. I remember that even when times are tight, I have more than most, and I have enough to give away. That reminds me that I have enough. 7 years ago, I would say it was probably the worst year of my life. I had a car accident, I got divorced, a couple of really important people in my life got cancer, and at one point I was penniless. I almost had to go to the food bank. But I was in seminary, I was surrounded by folks that were supportive, I was part of a church community, surrounded by people there that were supportive, and I kept being reminded to be grateful for what I had. Now, I can't prove to you that there is any connection between how I got through that time of my life and the abundance that I have today. I just know that it worked out for me, and it has worked for folks throughout the ages, and even science says there may be something to it. So I will leave it up to you. If you decide to try to add more gratitude into your life, I truly believe that you'll be thankful that you did. As we end our time together today in spiritual community, may we depart this sacred space knowing that blessings shall follow us all the days of our lives if we live in and return to right relationships, if we extend grace and forgiveness to ourselves and others, if we behold mercy as a spiritual superpower, if we emanate the greater love that holds us close, may our lives radiate the blessings that we have been given. May kindness and compassion fall gently from us, and may there be peace in the world, and may it begin again with us.